It's time to talk some Raptors soul. We're joined by the man himself, Eric Smith, to dish out what's going on with the Toronto Raptors. This is Instant Analysis brought to you by Tylenol Rapid Release Gel Caps. Rapid release for rapid relief. All right, E. Smith, the Toronto Raptors, well, things aren't going so well for them right now. It's their longest losing streak under Masai Ujiri, 6 games. That's, of course, not including the Tampa season. So, if you were going to pinpoint one little area that the Raptors should work on, they could work on to try and turn around this slide right now, what would you pick?
Well, if you're only letting me pick one, Kevin, that's probably issue number one because there are more than one, or there is more than one thing going on right now. But if I had to
Yeah.
pinpoint one, I think what stands out more than anything, and from the Raptors standpoint, it maybe didn't necessarily impact them as badly on Monday night against Philadelphia, but it has been something that has plagued them quite a bit of late, and that's the starts, the first quarters. I think more often than not this season, the Raptors have buried themselves early in a game. And at one point this season, now this is going back, the numbers have been skewed a little bit since then, but at one point we were talking about a Raptors team that had lost one of only 9 games in which they had a lead at the end of the first quarter. So the lead, very important to this team. But beyond the obvious of taking an early lead is not burying yourselves by 10, 15, 20. And we were seeing that with some consistency kind of a couple of weeks ago and in the early stages of this sort of skid that the Raptors have been on. It's even if it's not the score, Kevin, where, as I say, it's 10, 15, 20, it might be 60, 62, 65 plus percent to the opponent as well. So even when you think you're guarding well in the sense that you're maybe not giving up a lot, you're not giving up a good percentage. You're allowing teams to score relatively quote unquote easy looks, or you're being exposed on the perimeter because you're trying to pack it in the paint, etc. And it just seems like the Raptors, no matter which way they push or pull, it's not going in the right direction from the jump. So I think that's my biggest issue right now. They've shown they can score, but can they defend regularly and consistently? And that's where they made their name over the last X number of years as this being tenacious, hard-nosed defensive team. And I don't think we're seeing that on the regular like we'd like to.
So I think that's a level-headed take, and of course I expect that from you, V. I see a lot else on Twitter. Of course, Twitter is a bubble, and maybe just what we see on Twitter, what we hear on Twitter, isn't always necessarily what the overall fan base is thinking. But is it an overreaction from the Raptors Twitter fan base right now where they say a trade needs to happen yesterday? They need to totally revamp their offense. The starting five needs to continue to fluctuate. Something needs to give. Is this an overreaction? Or maybe it's all injuries. Is this an overreaction, or is this going to? Are the Raptors going to be able to right the ship?
No, I would say again, with no disrespect intended, that's a lot to unpack there because you probably just gave 4 or 5 things right there. And I would say that yes to all of those. Like, could a trade help? Yes. Could you change the starters? Yes. Is it an overreaction? Yes. Like honestly, I'm a guy that, and I'm not trying to, toe the middle line here. I'm a type of guy that has always looked at it and said, slice up that pie, slice up that pizza, and everybody gets a slice of this. Like when I'm talking about the blame pie,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's kind of a little bit of everything. Like injuries, no matter what anybody wants to say, you can call this an excuse. I call this a fact. I looked at the numbers earlier today. I already sent out a tweet myself. The Raptors, I believe, are fourth in the league in terms of the number of players injured this year. 11 players have been hurt at some point or another on this team. That's fourth in the league. In terms of man games lost to injury this year, the Raptors are sixth in the league at 91. Now, that includes also teams that have maybe lost players for the season. Every single time that person doesn't play, that's a man game loss. So the Raptors haven't yet had one of those. So even that 91 and that sixth place ranking, quote unquote, if we want to call it that, might be actually a little bit higher if we took out some of those teams that have their numbers inflated because of, as I say, guys that might be down for months upon end, or even, like I say, for a season-ending injury. If you also look at Raptors starting lineups, they've played 31 games. They've had 17 different starting lineups. That's number one in the league. Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent have both missed just shy of 20% of the season. Pascal Siakam has missed a third of the season. Precious Achiuwa has missed 2/3 of the season. And Otto Porter, who might not be this huge name for a lot of people, was supposed to be a key contributor to this team coming off a championship with the Warriors, a guy that can shoot the three, a guy that can defend, a veteran face and voice in the locker room and on the floor, has missed 3/4 of the season. So when you look at that, I just gave you 5 guys. All 5 of those guys would have or should have or could have been in Toronto's top 5. or excuse me, top eight rotation, top 8
Mm-hmm.
rotation.
Yeah.
Let's also then include a handful of games for Scotty Barnes, a handful of games as well for OG Anunoby. So injuries have absolutely been a factor. And to me, the injury is kind of like the trickle down effect. And I'm going to continue to yammer on here. What happens with the injuries?
Let's hear
Well,
it. Yeah.
when you have the injuries, as I already noted, it affects the starting lineup. 17 different starting lineups. When your starting lineups impacted, that impacts your second unit and your rotation. When you simply don't have the bodies as well and the number of bodies or the same regular familiar faces, I think that impacts the chemistry on the floor and what you're trying to do. When I'm trying to guide a guy to the hoop, or when I know that, let's just use two guys. When I'm Fred VanVleet and I know that I can steer my guy this way because OG's going to have my back, or because Siakam's going to be guarding the yard, and I steer him, and that help's not there, or there isn't that person in the back end, that then comes into trust. Then if the trust isn't there, am I thinking I've got to do it myself? I've got to put this on my shoulders, either on the defense or the offensive end. So I think the trickle down effect is very big. Hence the reason I say slice it up. It's kind of yes to a lot of those answers. And here's the other thing, and I swear I'll stop talking here then. When you talk about trades, are you trading from a position of power right now? The other 29 GMs in the league aren't stupid. They know that you're scuffling at this point. If Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster are picking up the phone, I'm going to assume the package for player X is going to be less than it was a month ago, even 2 weeks ago. And then also what you're getting back, is that something that is truly of value to you, or are you just shuffling pieces now? Are you going to be able to plug in that new piece and say, yes, it fits better than what I've got, what I know I have, and as opposed to working with what I have and getting more from or getting better from what I have, I'm going to just start from scratch with another 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that are brand new midstream and assume or think that they're going to make the difference. So that's always to me the tough thing about making a trade as well.
Okay. Tons to unpack there, and I appreciate the detailed answers. Let's package this into a Rolling Stone. Moss grows fat on a Rolling Stone. The Rolling Stone is going down the hill, and it's going pretty quickly on the Toronto Raptors right now and on this season. If Raptors fans are looking at everything that you've just presented them, and it feels like it's a lot of negative leaning things through no faults of any one specific player, one specific person. It's hard to even pinpoint exactly what the problem is, but they're going to say nothing's going right for the Toronto Raptors this season. Is it time for the dreaded R word, rebuild, maybe retool? Is it tanking time for the Toronto Raptors?
All right, let me take this in a couple of different directions. And I'm going to actually give credit to a guy that tweeted at me earlier today, and he mentioned this, and he's right. He kind of jogged my memory. And we're taking a portion of a quote that Masai Ujiri once said. And he said, play in for what? Referencing the play-in tournament that now has existed for a couple of years in the NBA. And the reason I bring that up is, Kevin, right now the Raptors, as bad as it's been, and there's no denying it's been bad. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that it hasn't been bad. A 6-game losing streak is nothing to, be thinking about rainbows and puppy dogs about. It's not good right now. But the Raptors, in spite of the slide, are still in that 10th spot. There are still 50 games remaining in the season. And what did we talk about earlier in terms of the injuries and all the different starting lineups and whatnot? I still think there is time to kind of right the ship. Now, are you going to right the ship and suddenly rip off a 6-game winning streak or win, 10 out of 12? I don't know. Maybe. They did last year. At this time last year, the Raptors were 14-17. They're not far off, or a game off, the pace of what they were at last year. And if I dare to go that woulda, coulda, shoulda route, even in the last 3 games, they were that close against Sacramento. They were that close against Brooklyn, and they were that close against Philadelphia. Even if you had taken 2 of those games, not all 3, 2 of them, you'd be sitting a game below 500 right now. And I would also ask people to circle back to, maybe you as well, Kevin, and hey, if I'm wrong about your assessment, then tell me. If you circle back to 6 to 8 weeks ago, let's say 8 weeks ago, before the season started, what did you think? And I'm saying you as in you, but also the fans you. What did you think the Raptors were going to be? I know I felt that they were going to be a team that was probably going to be right around where they were last year, battling for 4 or 5, maybe having a shot for home court advantage in the first round. And if they don't make 4, they're going to be somewhere in that 5, 6-ish range. I don't think they're going to be a 7, 8 having to worry about the play-in tournament.
I'd agree.
But I didn't necessarily think we were talking about a top 1 or 2 seed right now. So Yes, it's not good. Again, let's keep referencing. It's not good that you're 5 games below 500. It's not good that you're mired in the midst of a 6-game losing streak. It's not good that your defense hasn't been great. You've been getting off to slow starts and you can't seem to be shooting the three. And they've been one of the worst shooting teams from distance for over a month now. All of that is bad. But were we all wrong about what this team was, the core of this team, and the potential short and long-term future of this team? Or is it the injuries, the lack of continuity, the lack of chemistry, lack of consistency, and a team that does have the talent, and it's a matter of finding a way to get it back on the rails? That's why, for me, with 50 games remaining and still in that 10 spot, I wouldn't be throwing my hands up and saying, trade this guy, trade that guy, overhaul, tear it down to the studs, and let's tank, tank, tank. I'm not there at that point yet.
He is the voice of reason. He is Eric Smith. This was great. This was a lot.
Really. I'm so reasonable. I'm knocking my camera out here.
He's so fired up. He's got to get those points off. Thanks for this, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.